All right. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another live stream from HRN. Of course, the Home Rehab Network, providing pulmonary and cardiac rehabilitation. Of course, all done virtually. HRN, for those that do not know, is a telemedicine company that provides pulmonary and cardiac rehabilitation. Like there. Anyways. So it provides pulmonary and cardiac rehabilitation. So we always do everything. It's always done on a virtual basis, basically, where you use your camera or any type of smart device you have, whether it be your iPhone or your phone or your Android, computer that has a camera on it, tablets that have a camera on it, anything like that. Of course, we can utilize, and then you'll do what we call like a FaceTime. Sessions with your assigned clinician. Like I'm one of the assigned clinicians. I work specifically or mostly with advanced lung and heart disease patients at first, and then I'll work with others. Hey, Beth. So I have a few questions on here. One of the questions on here I'm going to actually discuss today as one of my topics, and that is for respiratory muscle training. So let me grab this chair really quick here. Okay, so this right here is called a Delta V. Okay, a Delta V is a respiratory muscle trainer. Delta V, by definition, is basically pressures of volume, volume and pressure. So that's what Delta V means. So if you have a triangle, it's based off of Latin, but you have a triangle, okay? So Delta V is volume and pressure. Good morning, Michelle. So a lot of people always ask me what setting they should be at on their Delta V. So I have right here a nephometer. Nephometer measures pressures, okay? So let me kind of demonstrate something really quick and attach this nephometer to an incentive spirometer that does not have a Delta V on it. So first off, let's just understand that a Delta V is a respiratory muscle trainer. It's called an RMT. So we just label it like this. Okay. So an RMT stands for, it's an acronym, just means respiratory muscle training. So the muscles that are involved are intercostal diaphragmatic muscles. And that's also including the internal intercostal as well as the external intercostal. State, well, there's two sets of muscle groups. One muscle group, like if I have my arm out, I have muscles never push, they can only pull. So you have to really think about, the physics behind it. But if I pull my arm, my bicep allows that contraction, so my hand will come closer to my body, right? So muscle pull. Now triceps, okay, will pull that arm back. So you have one muscle to pull, and you have another muscle to pull it back, right? So you have, for breathing, you have internal intercostal and external intercostal muscles. One set used for breathing in and one set used for breathing out. So if somebody's blowing up balloons, are they working on inhalation or exhalation? They're working on exhalation. A lot of people's problems are they can't breathe in deep. Not that they can't necessarily exhale, that they can't breathe in deep. So which muscle groups should you be working on when you're doing respiratory muscle training? Yeah, on not the exhale, but the inhale. So you have to work on the muscle groups that provides inhalation. Okay, and those are the muscles in between the ribs and parts of your diaphragm. So when I inhale, that's another muscle group, and if I exhale, that's a completely separate muscle group. All right, so blowing up balloons would not work because that's working on exhalation, and the weight behind it isn't very consistent. Like if I have a regular weight and let's say this weight, let's just pretend this weight is like 10 pounds or 20 pounds or something. And I lift that, the weight will be consistent at the same weight when I lift it up and bring it back down. Now let's take a balloon. The weight will be higher when you first exhale through it, but as it blows up, the weight or the resistance to blow up the balloon more is less until it reaches the very maximum, which it could be a little tougher to blow out more volume into that balloon, where the balloon will pop for hyper expansion. So obviously balloons will not work. So this is a NIF manometer. I'm going to be attaching this to the incentive spirometer. Okay, and don't worry, I'm going to explain everything as I go. So right now on this NIF manometer, so I have the setting set to 0 right now. Okay, and what this does, it measures pressure. Okay, so if I inhale, the marker in there that I dialed into 0, once I inhale, it will initiate that and actually push it to where either the green zone, I don't know if you can kind of see really close, the green zone, which is the good zone, means that's good pressure. Okay, so right now it's set to 0. I'm going to inhale through this. The NIF manometer ball, if you can see, did not raise at all. Okay, it did not raise. That means there's no pressure, there's no resistance. So can this exercise you if it provides no resistance? No, it cannot. There's no weight. It's like going into a gym and not picking up one single weight. The weight's not there. So it's just like walking in a gym and just standing in the middle of the gym, not lifting anything. Okay? So breathing in and out through this does not increase respiratory muscle growth, of course. Now, if I attach this to a delta V, so let me put the incentive spirometer down, and let me attach a delta V to this, and increase resistance, let's say, to a 5, to a 6, let's say 5, which is a decent amount of resistance on this. It's from 0 to 7 on a delta V. Now, a setting of 0 on a delta V just means you would use the mouthpiece onto the incentive spirometer for its intended use, and that's just to measure volume. Once you increase the setting from a 0, so like if you go to a 1 to 7, that gives you resistance. Okay? Now, when you're adding resistance, you're not measuring, because according to the FDA guidelines that approve an incentive spirometer that's approved through them, all right, which these are approved, okay, this incentive spirometer by definition should never give you resistance, because it's not meant to do that. It's meant to measure volume. So when you attach a delta V to an incentive spirometer, what are you doing? You're looking at flow rate. You're looking at how fast you're breathing in is what determines, because it's a small diameter. So let's take, for instance, and I'm going to demonstrate this in a second. Take, for instance, you have a coffee straw. Okay, a very, very small diameter straw. You try to breathe in fast, the pressure would be very high, because it has to, all that air has to go through that small little diameter that's making up the coffee straw, right? Okay, so imagine I take a 3-liter syringe. 3 liters, so it's a big, huge syringe. And I put it next to a coffee straw, and I pull the air through, you know, by pulling the plunger of that big syringe. I pull air in. If I pull it slow, it'll be easy through that coffee straw. If I try to pull it fast, the pressure would be very great. I mean, the resistance would be very heavy, because I'm trying to pull it very fast, trying to get air through that coffee straw as fast as possible, and it's just going to take a lot of strength to do that. So at what flow rate are you supposed to be at on your respiratory muscle trainer? That's the big giver, because if you breathe slow through it, you might be still able to do it with a high setting. If you breathe at the right speed, I mean breathing in at the right speed, it will make the resistance either correct or not correct. So what speed are we supposed to breathe in at? That's why you attach a delta V to an incentive spirometer. You would be looking at the flow meter ball on an incentive spirometer. So when you attach a delta V to it, and let's say that little ball right here, the flow meter ball, doesn't increase to at least half or a little higher, then the flow rate is not correct, meaning that the pressure is not equivalent to that setting. Okay, so it's how fast I breathe in that makes the biggest difference. So right now I have a delta V attached to a nephometer, which is going to measure the pressure. Now if I put it, I'm going to put this at a 5, so the big arrow points at a 5. I'm going to inhale through this. I'm going to set it back to a 0. I'm going to inhale through this. And I don't know if you can kind of see. John, can you zone in on that really quick for me, please? I have to. Yeah, perfect, perfect. So as you can see, there's a little arrow. It's an orange arrow that's in the green zone. Let me turn this arrow back to 0 and demonstrate again. So right now, the starting of it is at 10 centimeters of water. Is that on centimeters of water? So, yes, that's on centimeters of water. So right now it's set to 0. I'm going to inhale through this, and right now I have my delta V set to a 5. Now I'm going to set it to a 0 and breathe in through here. Did that move at all? No, it didn't move. Now let me set the setting to a 5. Okay, and breathe in through here. Okay. Now the orange indicator is in the green zone, meaning the pressure is good. That's a good amount of pressure, so that flow rate, how fast I breathe in, that really makes the biggest difference here. So it's how fast I breathe in. So when I attach, now let's say, of course, you don't have one of these. So what you would do is attach it to an incentive spirometer. So on the incentive spirometer, if I was going to measure my volumes, I would just set the delta V to 0 where there's no pressure. Okay? Then I would inhale using the flow meter bulb, keeping that in the middle, and looking how high I get using the top of the piston. Remember, not the middle, not the bottom of the piston. That blue thing right there is called a piston. This is called a piston chamber. This is a flow meter. Okay? That manages your flow rate of how fast you breathe in. So if you did something like this, it's not going to get very high because the flow meter ball went all the way to the top and you compromise your volume. Okay, so you never breathe in fast. So remember, this is set to a 0. If I keep this between the arrows, I should be inhaling 1 liter per second. Drink some water here. I should be inhaling 1 liter per second. Now, if I try to inhale really fast, why did my volume not come up so high? Watch, let me demonstrate, let me do it the correct way. I'm going to breathe all the way out first until there's no air left in my lungs. Why did I get it all the way to the top when before I tried to breathe in really fast, it didn't get very high? Because your lungs don't open up like that. So your lungs never open up like this. They don't all of a sudden shoot open. So what opens up by simple physics is the top of the lungs are narrow and smaller, while the bottom of the lungs, the basal areas, not the apex are on the top. The bottom is the basal areas of your lungs. Those open up, you need a little bit more timing to inhale, and you use those lungs. Meaning for fight and flight response, meaning like if I was, let's say I had a steak on my waist and there was a lion chasing me, Okay, I'm going to try to run very fast, of course. Okay, but my breath, like how I'm breathing, is not going to try to use simple, easy breathing like, okay, I mean like deep breathing, like using the whole lung volume. It's going to use the top, because that's the easiest to inhale, because the top part of your lungs don't take a lot of pressure to open up. The bottoms take a lot more pressure. That's why the flow meter ball has to be in the middle. If you try to breathe in fast, the only thing that's going to open up is the top. The top part of your lungs are made for rapid movement, where you can breathe and run at the same time, and it shouldn't be that exerting for you. So like, now try doing that same pace. I'm going to try doing the same pace, breathing very deep. Very tough to do. I need more timing for that, because those lungs take more pressure. Okay? So, when I attach a delta V and I don't have a nephometer, I'm going to be using the flow meter ball. I'm not going to be using the piston this time. I'm going to be using this one, not this chamber. When I'm doing respiratory muscle training, my goal is, because of a delta V, is to increase my volume, getting more oxygen to come in, more CO2 to come out. So let's say I have this at a 0. I would use a 0 on a delta V to measure. If I want to do respiratory muscle training, what do I do then? Does anybody know? If I'm going to do respiratory muscle training, I'm going to increase the resistance from a 0 using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so let's say I have it at a 1, and I breathe in through here. Remember, I'm not measuring this time. What am I using this time? The flow meter ball. Because I'm able to bring that flow meter ball all the way to the top, a setting of 1 is too light for me. Okay, now let me put it at a 7, which is a very, very good, Lenny. Let me put it up to a 7 and inhale. So I can bring the flow meter ball to the middle, but what I want to do is try to bring it above the middle. Because I can't do that, the setting of 7 is too heavy. Okay? Where you want to be at on your incentive spirometer, the flow meter, is you want to be in just above halfway to just above the arrow. You can zoom in. So you have to be above halfway. So in that box I just created, it's not all the way to the top, it's just around the top arrow. So when I inhale through here, what setting is that? Oh, that's a 5. Sorry. Put it down back to a 7. Remember, you're not looking at the volume this time, you're looking at the flow meter. Flow meter ball couldn't go above the halfway mark, so a 7 is too heavy for me. I'm going to drop the setting down to, let's say, a 4. Okay, breathe in through it. I can still bring the flow meter ball all the way to the top. That means 4 is still too light, 7 is still too heavy. So then I move it up to a 5. I'm just going to move it up to a 5 and breathe in through here. Okay, so 5, and let me move it to a 6. So 5 and 6 would be the best for me. 5 and 6 would be the best setting for me. Now that I know that, I don't have to have it attached to an incentive spirometer anymore unless I wanted to. You know, if I can keep it on the incentive spirometer and just use it for its intended use by measuring. So when I measure, I keep it at a 0. When I'm doing respiratory muscle training, I block this out and I just concentrate on the flow meter zone for respiratory muscle training. But once I have the setting and I understand how fast I'm supposed to breathe because I'm more conscientious of my use on the incentive spirometer, I can easily just take this off, okay, and do respiratory muscle training with the same speed I managed in my head using the incentive spirometer. So let's say now I have this. So what's my proper setting? Remember, some people's proper setting could be a 4, could be a 5. It's all based off of the person. You go into a gym You go into a gym and you see 200-pound weights, you see 100-pound weights. You obviously wouldn't start with the heaviest weight. There's a range of weights, probably from like zero, well, not zero, but probably from like half a pound all the way up. So this kind of works like the same thing, except you won't find this at a gym, right? So now that I understand the flow rate, how fast I'm supposed to breathe in, I'm going to set it to either a 5 or 6. 6 will be a heavy amount of training, like heavyweight training, while 5 will be a little easier, but that's my range. Okay, so you put it at 5, I breathe in. Now, how deep do you breathe in through this device? You have to fill up your lungs 100%. You want to fill up your lungs, meaning you want to inhale until you can't inhale anymore, and then exhale all the way out. I've noticed on some other devices out there in the market, which I can't mention those devices, but they're not a Delta V. I've noticed that there's no way to manage the flow rate. So there's no way to manage a flow rate because it just has the device, like you take for instance like the breather device. Where's the flow rate? Like how do you manage how fast you breathe in? You can't. Okay, this one of course you can. That's why we use this the most. Hospitals, other places, they all use Delta Vs. So Delta Vs are, regardless of some other devices that advertise crazy and you can it's very obvious as, oh yeah, I know that device. Yeah, they advertise all the time. This device you won't see it advertised as much, because we use this in a clinical setting. But the reason why another company would advertise dramatically is because there's no good data. And what do I mean by the data, the data? Well, according to the American Association of Cardiovascular Pulmonary Rehabilitation, that's the ACVPR, they stated that intercostal muscular training or respiratory muscle training was not good because they used the data based off of the other devices. The design of the new device, the Delta V, is Dr. Shaw and I and some others are actually going to start testing and making the data for this so we can change the data that's on the American Association of Cardiovascular. And why is that important? Why is it important to structure the data, and submit it to the AACVPR? Because that's what clinicians use. Clinicians use the AACVPR manual, the guidelines, to help their patients out, how it's structured, how the program works, but also how like what types of instrumentation or what types of techniques, what types of things that you should be doing with your patients are based off of the AACVPR guidelines. Okay, there are other guidelines out there, but we like the AACVPR a lot. Nothing wrong with any of the other guidelines out there too. So we still use guidelines from American Chest Physician Guidelines, American Thoracic Society, Emphysema Foundation of America, to American Lung Association. So we still use those organizations, but we're going to change that data because the other respiratory muscle training devices didn't give good data where it was consistent. You have some people that do well and some people that don't. This one, if you do it right, they're always doing very, very well, okay? Because if you do it the right way, the way that we show you, you obviously do it well every time because now there's management, there's flow rate management. So anyways, now that I have this all set, why in the hospital they want you to get that blue thing up as fair as you can on the flow meter up to the top? So they want you to pick up volume, Cheryl. They want you to pick up volumes because let's say this was a question that's on the comment section. So you're in the hospital. So the question is, why in the hospital they want you to get that blue thing, which is the piston, as far up as high as possible and on the flow meter or up to the top. So the education behind incentive spirometry is not as good, okay? So what I mean by that is in hospitals, facilities, a lot of times you can't change the way that somebody was educated in school and they apply that education to their professional career. And you would assume that they're doing it right. Sometimes, and I I should even say sometimes, it's actually a lot of times, the education given at the hospital isn't up there to a good par. You might have some that are really good with their education, but as far as what we've seen from some of the really great hospitals is, the education for some clinician isn't very high, meaning that they won't give a lot of education, so they're assuming they're doing it right. But if they actually read the directions, if the clinicians actually read the directions off the manufacturer of, let's say, the incentive spirometer, they would know how to do it right every single time. Virginia Forster, yes, it is Virginia Forster. She's the director at Baltimore County Community College, especially over at Essex Community College. So she teaches, she trains the the professors to teach, respiratory care and things like that. So she would usually have me come in to those schools, and I would teach the respiratory therapy students of how to do pulmonary rehab and what's involved in pulmonary rehab. Sometimes just the education behind it isn't there up to par with some facilities or some people. Okay, because when pulmonary rehab, it's on-the-job training that you learn from, not really from the school itself. Okay, because if you pick up a respiratory care textbook and you look at the respiratory care textbook and look up pulmonary rehab, you won't have a lot of information as far as techniques. You'll learn about the pulmonary rehab, but you won't see techniques behind it. You won't find any techniques. The education is very lacking in pulmonary rehab. So that's how I would answer that question. I know it's a long answer, but so needless to say, on a respiratory, on an incentive spirometer, when you're doing your respiratory, you're measuring your volumes. You don't want to have a low volume. You want a larger volume. Let's see. All right, Michelle Jones, when you are measuring your volumes, you go off the top of the piston. Is that what you said? Yes, it is. You always go from the top of the piston, never the middle or the bottom. Let's see. What does total lung capacity is 5.93 mean? That means you should be able, so your predicted versus your actual. So an incentive spirometer measures volume. Now, total lung capacity, let's say it's 5.93. So that's in liters. So that's 5,093 milliliters, right? So on an incentive spirometer, how high does an incentive spirometer go? Some of them, depends on which ones you have, like this one goes up to 4,000. Some of them go to 2,500, which are the pediatric ones. And then you have the ones that, for people that are a lot taller, go to 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000. Okay? So it all depends on what type of incentive spirometer you have. But anyways, the total lung capacity means how much air can actually go into your lungs versus how much is actually going in there. So if you have a total lung capacity of 5.93, that means you have a large lung volume. They mean the ability to breathe in. If I had a manual, I could kind of show you, but I don't have one to show you on a pulmonary function test. They do layouts like this. They run out a layout like this. It's just so you can see it a little bit better here. So you have a box. Okay, and right here, this is lung volume. Okay, right here would be your TLV, total lung volume. Okay, or your total lung capacity. I can even do that, total lung capacity. All right, total lung capacity. Then you have, from here down to here, you have your expiratory reserve volume, your inspiratory reserve volume, or even your vital capacity. Okay, then you have another spot here, one down here, one up here, is residual volume, inspiratory residual volume. total, your tidal volume. It's actually VT. Okay, so your total lung volume, your inspiratory capacity, how much you can inhale, okay, how much you can exhale. Total lung volume equals your whole vital capacity with your expiratory reserve volume, and then you have your tidal volume. Tidal volume right here, this tidal volume, represents how much air you can breathe in at any given time when you're just doing regular breathing. So regular breathing, what that volume is. That usually is roughly around 5 to 750 average, average. So it could be around 5 to 750 milliliters. That means if I put somebody on a ventilator, I would look at their, their height, and their weight, their ideal body weight, and then I would calculate exactly what's their proper tidal volume. So when I put that person on a ventilator, invasive as well as non-invasive, but invasive is really what I'm talking about. Meaning I put the tube inside the person's, all the way down the trachea, just above that carina, and I'll inflate a cuff. So I will go over calculations in my, and jot down the calculations. And then I would, depending on the person's height, issue kind of like a range of tidal volume on that ventilator. For that person, when they use it, when they're on that ventilator, it will initiate a breath. And let's say I put it at 750 milliliters. Okay, that means they'll give them every like 2-3 seconds, it will give them a breath of around 750 milliliters if I put in 750 milliliters. Now, it's all based off of how tall you are. So, Barbara, you were asking what's the total lung volume. It's your complete capacity. That's how much air can go in, what your lungs are capable of doing, is your complete capacity. All right. So on respiratory muscle training, how often do we do respiratory muscle training, everybody? How often do we do that? When you're doing respiratory muscle training, you do it 6 times a day, 10 minutes each. We have seen that people that did it 1 minute per day, which isn't a lot of time, but they were doing it 1 time per day, they weren't getting a lot of good results. The sweet spot is what we see, that sweet spot, that really good area of working out is usually about 6 times a day, 10 minutes each. That's where we see the most significant improvements from when they use a respiratory muscle trainer. So if they're doing it 1 or 2 times, and let's say they're doing it not as well as everyone else, let's say they're doing it like this. Well, how is that going to help you? You have on your muscle groups, let's say you have like this one question I see on here is for pulmonary hypertension, and even with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. So you have your lungs, okay? Okay, so this is 0, and this is 0. Why is this 0? Does anybody know why is this? Because there's no air coming in, so that's 0, right? Okay, so these are my ribs. Got a big diaphragm. Okay, if I inhale, let's say I inhale, I pull in some air, and I inflate my lungs to about 500 milliliters. Okay? The air is, there's going to be some air coming into the small tubes, but it's not really making its way into the deep part of the lungs. When you breathe shallow, you're really only using the top part of your lungs. That's why you ever see your chest x-ray, a lot of people will see that their like emphysema will be found on the top part of the lungs, not so much the bottom. Sometimes you might find them on the side a little bit on the side, but mostly it's always on the top, okay? So let me put 500, I'll also put 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, and let me also put 5,000 on here. So these are in milliliters. This is in pounds, okay? Means how many pounds does it take to inhale to a certain volume? So in pounds, to get to 500, well, technically, to get to about 1,000 takes about 3 to 4 pounds of pressure to pull it open that much. Okay? To open up to around 2,000 milliliters, meaning filling up the lungs nearly almost halfway, it's going to take 4 to 6 pounds of pressure to pull open the lungs that much. To open up to 4,000 milliliters, okay, meaning you're pretty much filling up the whole entire lung, it takes around 6 to 8 pounds of pressure. To get further than that, now remember, this is average. It all depends on the scarring. You know, if you have a lot of scarring, it's going to be a lot more. If you're trying to get past the 4,000, it's going to take 8 to 12 pounds. When somebody breathes shallow, they are not working all intercostal muscles. When they breathe shallow, they're only working 1 or 2 intercostal spaces, not the whole thing. So when I see people doing this on their other respiratory muscle training, and they're doing this, all they're doing is strengthening up what they currently already have strong. They're just working out intercostal, the top part of your intercostal muscles. That's like the same thing as if I went to a gym and I curled partially. I didn't curl all the way up. I didn't do a full rep. I did partial reps. Well, that's not going to help that muscle. So that muscle won't get as strong as if I did full repetition, right? Well, breathing shallow will do the same thing. That's what they don't educate people. Now, when you inhale deeper, it's going to take more muscle group and, of course, more muscle utilization to open up the lungs further, okay? So the deeper you breathe, the more volume comes in, more air comes in, more CO2 comes out. When somebody breathes shallow, and let's say they did a pulmonary function test, let's say Barbara went and found out that her lung capacity is 5.93, okay, which is 5,093 milliliters. All right, so she found that out, and let's just say Barbara's current disease state on her volume on her incentive spirometer, let's say it only went up to about 500 milliliters, and that 500 contributes to what the FEV / FVC, and what that would equal. Let's say that equals, she did a pulmonary function test and it equaled, let's just say 20%. Okay, let's just say 20%. Good morning, Fedora. So let's say it was 20%. What does the 20% account for these? No, it only accounts for what you can inhale. And currently, because you lack the strength, let's say, you can only inhale to 1,000 or 500 milliliters when your body is capable of 5,000 milliliters. Okay, that means the top part of lungs, because lungs never open up like this, they open up top first. So where's the smoke inhalation, pollution, household cleaners, dust, pollen, mold, fungi, whatever? Where's that exposure going? To the top part of the lungs. So that FEV, FEC, that diagnosis, that's the numbers that we look at. If it's less than a certain amount, it depends on how severe the person's lung disease is. So at 20%, that's accounting for what the person can inhale, because that's what's being triggered on the machine. Okay? Because the person couldn't inhale deeper than that, it can't measure these and determine what the FEV, forced expiratory volume, and the expiratory volume in 1 second, and your forced vital capacity. It can't measure that. It can only measure what you can inhale currently. Okay? So the 20% is found here. Are these as damaged as the ones on the top? No, they can't be, because you can't open them up, let's say. Because you can't open them up, you can't expose them to that smoke inhalation, pollution, household cleaners, dust, pollen, yeast, fungi, whatever. You can't expose that down here, so they can't be as messed up as the ones on the top. Okay? Now, will these be cured all the way to the top when you're done with pulmonary rehab? No. No. They're progressive, but you can make it a lot better. So let's say now that person that can only breathe at 500 milliliters increase their volume on their incentive spirometer. I'll just draw it in pink. Let's say now they increased it to 2,000 milliliters. That means they had a 1.5 liter or 1,500 milliliter improvement. So now they do another pulmonary function test. Before they were at 20%. Now they're in larger volume and they're not in the areas that are as damaged. They still have the ones on the top that are still damaged, but the ones on the bottom aren't as damaged. So now the FEV1 most likely will have a large increase. So you might have like a 40%, 50% increase. So then that person would be like 60%. Before, after. Okay? So now the person's new pulmonary function test score will be 60% if they increased it. That means if they increase it more, will that go back up? Yes. It's not rocket science. That's just how the body works. Lungs never open up like this. They open up top first, middle second, the bottom is always going to be last. That's why when somebody tries to get somebody to relax, they say, breathe in slow. You know, just breathe in slow. So on respiratory muscle training, when we're doing respiratory muscle training for people with pulmonary hypertension, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, restrictive lung disease, as well as obstructive lung disease, we would work out the whole entire muscle group as much as possible. That means on their device, they can't breathe in shallow, like that. They would have to breathe in as deep as they can, working out all intercostal spaces, providing a full rep, like they would with their bicep, right? So when they breathe in, they're going to max out their volume, meaning they're not going to be able to bring in any more air. Once they max out, then they're going to exhale. They have 4 seconds to exhale, 4 seconds to inhale. So when they exhale for 4 seconds, at the very end, there should be no extra air left. When they inhale for 4 seconds, there should be no, there can't be, it feels like it's not possible to bring any more air in. So you have 4 seconds to inhale completely and 4 seconds to exhale, okay? Let's say I was breathing in, and with the resistance, it was taking me 6 seconds to inhale as deep as I could. That means your resistance or your flow rate, you weren't breathing in fast enough to complete the 4-second rule, okay? The 4 seconds, all right? Let's see, Fedora, let's see. So I have interstitial lung disease and I had a pulmonary function test, but I don't have the results from my doctor yet. And I also did the 6-minute walk test and it started at 95. I was walking back and forth for a few minutes. My oxygen dropped down to 88, so I was given 2 liters. So I continued and it dropped again. So it was put on 4. So now I'm on 7 liters of oxygen at home. No worries, I'm not laughing at you. It's just, these are easy fixes over here. These are things that we fix all the time over here. So like Fedora, I can just easily, really easily, increase the muscle strength in the lungs and increase the lung functions, but also get Fedora off of that 7 liters and drop it back down to room air again. But it will take a little time. If you gave me 3 months, I could do it. You know, meaning I would have to work with you for 3 months. That's how the process works in HRN. So when completed the walk, I only had to use 4 liters, but I was told I wasn't ready to be off of oxygen. Yeah, no worries. If somebody's using, and that's one thing that we do here at HRN, is that we don't try to maintain you the same way. We like to focus on transformation, not maintaining. Meaning you go in and you come out feeling the same exact way as when you're done, okay? With maybe a smidge of improvement. Here at HRN, you'll never stay the same because we're going to make sure that you'll be in the program until we fix that problem, meaning the volume might be a problem, we'll fix the volume. Interstitial lung disease causing a lot of fibrosis, we'll fix that problem. We're not curing anything. All we're doing is managing the lungs better. Okay, getting the lungs to open up more, working out in a different way, doing different types of things. I mean, there's a lot of exercises in HRN that we do for our patients. That's balance, Tai Chi, yoga. We do intercostal diaphragmatic muscle strengthening. I mean, you're talking about 1,700 exercises and techniques that we teach and do with our patients, not one or two. We don't do that. We do a plethora of such a large amount. So anyways, I don't want to breathe shallow through the respiratory muscle trainer. I want to breathe in deeper. So I'm going to fill up my lungs all the way. Now, how much timing do I need to inhale? 4 seconds. I'm going to add 2 seconds on top of that. I'm going to add 2 seconds on my inhale. Not on my exhale, 2 seconds on my inhale. Let me demonstrate. Now, if I was going to do it regularly, I would just breathe in as deep as I can for 4 seconds, exhale all the way out. Remember, when I fill up my lungs 100%, I should have or feel like there's no ability to bring in any more air into my lungs. And when I exhale all the way out, I should feel like there's no amount of air left in my lungs to breathe out. Okay? A plethora for sure. I know, it's a lot. So I breathe in 4 seconds. So in 4 seconds at time, I should have filled up my lungs 100%. Then I'm going to add 2 more seconds, pulling a little bit more air, even though it feels like nothing else is coming in, because it's going to feel that way. Where you breathe in and it's like, I can't breathe in anymore, and he wants me to go 2 more seconds. Because what do I want you to do? I don't want you to hold your breath at your max. I want you to try to keep bringing air in. See, look, let's say you're at 1,000 milliliters, okay, of volume. And you inhale to 1,000, you exhale all of the volume out, you inhale to your max, you exhale to your max, you inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. When do you improve? You don't. That's why you want to add 2 more seconds. See, what will happen is if you inhale to your max and try to keep pulling air in, you'll get these small little micro improvements that you won't really notice on your incentive spirometer. But as it perpetuates and gains more and more and more, then you'll start noticing a larger volume. Okay, so what you're doing is those intercostal, the muscles in between the ribs, okay, those intercostal muscles on the bottom part of your lungs, okay, when you start stimulating them, they're going to try to pull open and cause, and you're creating that tension by pulling more air in. So even though you can't move it as much, just by providing that tension on those muscles on your inhale. So when you inhale, and it feels like you can't inhale anymore, you don't want to hold that breath and relax. You want to try to keep entraining air, try to bring more air in by keeping those stimulated, the bottom intercostal muscles stimulated. So when I inhale through that respiratory muscle training, when I inhale, I'll try to add more, even though there's nothing else, feels like there's nothing else coming in. But the thing is, there is. It's just these small little micro improvements, and after a while, the lungs start getting stronger and stronger and stronger. The muscles, they start getting stronger, then you start noticing a larger volume, like on your incentive spirometer. If you're doing the respiratory muscle training correctly, and let's say you're at 1,000 milliliters when you started, every 3 days you should be seeing about 500 milliliter improvement if you're doing it correctly. And mind you, you have a max. Like Barbara mentioned that she has a max, okay? So you can't go above that max, so all you can do is hit that max, all right? All right, being on oxygen in February 2021, this is the first time ever doing the walk. I've been through 2 pulmonologists. I never one offered the pulmonary rehab. I need help. No worries, Fedora, that's what we're here for. We're trying to show and tell our strengths as well as anything else. But this program is covered by insurance. The insurances that are covered in Maryland, we take all the insurances. Out of Maryland, which usually it's a large population of our patients, we just don't take the Medicaid in other states yet. We do have a couple that are in other states. Their Medicaid did cover it, but Medicare nationally throughout all the states in the United States, okay, every one of them, if you have Medicare, this program's covered for you. Medicaid for all the other states are not, except for Maryland. But we can still ask, because we did find that a few Medicaid insurances did take some of our patients. If you have any commercial insurances, they will cover our program. Okay, like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, and I mean, I'm not a biller, but the best thing I could ask, if you're trying to get into the program, have billing approve it first. So you would call HRN up, you would call HRN, and you would talk to billing to see if they can actually push it through, which is they'll find out really quickly. Now, mind you, Fedora, we take all insurances. I'm not sure how that's confusing to anybody. So we take all insurances except for Medicaid in other states. So if you're in Indiana and if you have Medicaid, it probably wouldn't be covered. We can still ask, but I'm not a biller, everybody. I'm a clinician. I'm under their Maryland Board of Physicians as a respiratory care practitioner. I work specifically with advanced lung and heart disease. So I'm not a biller, so I'm not going to go into that specialty of explaining billing stuff and stuff like that in this right now, okay? You see, I have a Medicare program insurance and your program, let's see, was denied. Did you max out on your insurance? Sometimes depending if you went to another pulmonary rehab, sometimes if you maxed out, because Medicare gives you a certain amount of time, and they'll give you like one time, like 90 days or something even more. But if, let's say Medicare denied somebody, then that provider, like the doctor, your doctor, would just have to submit a referral into our program. And that referral has to state a necessity for that patient. Now, let's say you have Medicare, but you're able to walk 1,000 feet without stopping. Let's say you're able to walk 250 feet without stopping. Okay, sometimes because you're already at a very high level, like we can't accept an athlete. We have athletes, but we can't accept an athlete through insurance. They would have to do a private pay thing. Okay, so because why? Because we work with the people that have advanced lung and heart disease. So if you don't have that type of diagnosis and somebody just gets a little winded, I mean, obviously you couldn't be in a pulmonary, program. But there are some ways that we can work out with your doctor by having them submit a referral and give an explanation of why that patient needs to be in the program. Let's say it was from a progressive disease, and so far the disease state is very severe, that most likely that person will be approved. I have never found where a patient was denied when it was a necessity. I've never seen that, ever, in here. If you legitimately have pulmonary and heart, or a combination, or just one diagnosis of something that's very bad in you, like a disease, like a progressive disease, and it's at least hit moderate stage or more, or severe, okay, or even very severe, then you're most likely always approved. Okay, but if you're able to, like, let's say you're working, you just get a little winded, but it might not even be a disease, it might be because you're out of shape. Insurance probably won't cover that. So if the doctor can actually state that, hey, this person has COPD, or this person has IPF, and this person needs to be in pulmonary rehab, because then the insurance company would see that note and say, all right, we'll prove it. So there is ways around it, but you would have to have a legitimate need to be because we're clinicians, it's not like a personal trainer, I mean, even though we're kind of doing that, but it's not really a personal trainer. You're working out with a clinician that specializes in pulmonary and cardiac rehabilitation. Let's see, should I fit the bill? I should fit the bill. We'll try again with the doctor. No problem, Linda. I would definitely suggest that, but I would actually ask billing here, because they usually have these special numbers that they can contact your doctor really quick and get the referral fast, like really, really, really fast. Took Dr. Pack to my cardiologist yesterday. He was very impressed with your program. Perfect, Lenny, perfect. Perfect, perfect. Yeah, we're trying to get the word out as much as possible. Like we advertise on radio stations and on social media and stuff like that, but there are some that don't know about this program because HRN is a very high successful program, so we want to have people in this program, you know, as much as possible because this is something that's saving so many lives. You know, and we don't want somebody who, you know, we don't want somebody that needed a pulmonary rehab program not to get into a pulmonary rehab program. So we want everyone to have the chance to do it, okay, at least get their life back. Live Zoom classes, absolutely, absolutely. Where's HRN in Florida? Remember, HRN resides in Maryland, but they service the United States. It's a virtual program, so you don't physically come into this facility. Now, mind you, we do have a gym where patients can come in and utilize our gym, okay? And we would work out just like a physical traditional building. Because, I mean, technically it is a traditional, traditional building. And we are certified, you know, we're through insurance and all that stuff. But if you're out of state, you would just be doing all of your exercise from home, which is what you want to do, okay? Is what you want to do. But we, like I said, we do have a gym if you want to utilize that. I told the girl that gave me my PFT about your program. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you very much. Remember, guys, it takes, at this moment in time, you know, in regards to health, COPD or lung disease just made its way up higher, especially during COVID. Okay, where, you know, like before it was heart disease that always remained to the highest reason for, you know, for mortality reasons, was one of the highest. Okay, then you have like people with diabetes, heart disease, and COPD was a little further down a while ago. When COVID happened, it shot all the way up. Okay, so people are dying from these things. So we, you know, today, in today's situation, I think all the clinicians really need to really need to work hard on their patients because first off, there's not a lot of clinicians. Okay, a lot of clinicians quit, not with HRN, but they quit in some hospitals and stuff like that, from nurses, respiratory therapists, doctors, and physical therapists, occupational speech pathologists, you know, so on and so forth. But I think at this day and age, we really need everybody to, you know, I understand people's personal reasons, the clinicians' personal reasons behind it. Maybe it was a mask thing or a mask mandate. I don't know. But in this day and age, I think at this time, I think all clinicians really need to get together to help out. You know, like we really need to help our people out. You know, that's the United States, everybody. No one should be missed, ever. Or at least that's what HRN is doing. We focus on everybody. You know, we focus on everybody that comes in and gets helped. You know, that's what we focus on. We shouldn't be discharging anybody because that's not anything we do. You know, we shouldn't be discharging somebody when they're not ready yet. You know, we discharge them when they're ready, when they graduate, but we don't just, you know, just throw that to the side like they're insignificant or something. That's ridiculous. So no problem, Roxanne, but I feel this day and age, all clinicians need to get together. Even past clinicians need to get together and start helping out a little bit more. But like I said before, I understand personal endoendos or, you know, some people have their own political ideology about, you know, the COVID and stuff like that. But people should know by now COVID is real. You know, people should know that, you know, people that have advanced lung and heart disease, it's going to get worse. You know, until they make the choice, you know, to actually get better. And before, there's always a million reasons not to do something. But does anybody have any questions? Lenny, local hospital pulmonary rehab was only treadmill and hand bike. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Lenny, that's what we were saying before. When people are in pulmonary rehab and other facilities, they usually will just put them on a treadmill or on a bike. They won't coach them how to breathe. They a lot of times won't work on respiratory muscle strengthening. They'll work with their legs, but the person can't breathe. I mean, think about it, guys. How can you breathe well if you're on a treadmill and your lungs are shot? You're not going to do well. It'll also discourage you. You know, it's like every time I'm on a treadmill, I just keep getting out of breath. My oxygen drops, and they stop therapy automatically. Well, we don't do that here. What we do here is we work on your pulmonary first, getting that up to a good par, and then we start exercising you. Because we understand that the frustrations of not being able to breathe very well. Okay? Unfortunately, yes, it does, yeah. Yeah, I know. But that's why we want people in a successful program, not just any other program. So, guys, do yourself a favor and actually come and see me. You know, like just call us up and just want to do a one-on-one chat with me, that's fine. But try to get into this program just because it's just the amount of help that you get. It's just priceless. Anyways, that's all the time I have for today. I was trying to go over some of the questions. Let me see. I have one. Well, actually, I have almost 2 minutes. Let's see. Let me go over some of these questions here. They say exercise, but I can't breathe. Yeah, I know. I know, Barbara. No worries. That's why we exist. And that's another reason why we're very successful, is because people start seeing the difference. They see the help that you get. You know, all the clinicians involved, the involvements of all the clinicians. They don't throw you to the side and wait 6 months before you try to join in for a pulmonary rehab. Sometimes the wait line is like 6 months to get into one, you know, because there's not a lot available anymore. This one's available to the whole United States, HRN is, because it's a virtual program. Anyways, let's see. Are your therapy classes at a specific time and days? So we work out the times based off of your schedule. We do have time slots. So if somebody wants to work out with us in the evenings, they have that ability. If they want to work out in the mornings, later in the evening, you know, whatever. We work around your schedule. Class times are about an hour and a half each class. But remember, you're working out, so just be ready. No one should be coming in here and just sitting down. You know, no one should be joining a program and just sitting down. You're going to work out, okay? Because our goal is to get you to that level where you can work out easily without having so compromised on your breathing or your other health. What happens after upper lobes of the lungs both are removed due to emphysema? Well, that's a great question for Dr. Shaw, actually. So usually what happens when the upper lobes are taken, let's say it took the upper lobes out because of emphysema reasons, so what do you have left? The bottom ones. That person would have to learn how to breathe a little bit deeper, you know, because that muscle group that was working out, and look, the cavity, that space, these bottom ones will actually start moving up a little bit to fill up that cavity, the empty space. Talking about like this. These will fill up in that space right here, okay? But Dr. Shaw would love to answer that question. Let's see. I lost my left lung due to cancer. Is it better to concentrate on deep breathing? So this is a pretty common question. I think this is a great question for one of the doctors that actually makes those decisions. Let me bring that up with Dr. Shaw and see if he will be okay to answer that, which usually he is. Anyways, guys, that's it. Dr. Shaw's coming up, so if you want to just stick around and wait for Dr. Shaw. Dr. Shaw's coming in right now. If you want to do that, it's up to you, John, whatever you want to do.